Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how I made this mold of my Kaiju number 8 sculpt so that I could cast a mask in resin. I've got the sculpt to a place that I like, so now I'm going to go ahead and mold it. I put monster clay walls around the sculpt to try to catch any silicone that's going to fall off. So I'm using Rebound 25, which is a 2-part silicone. Mix it by volume or weight, so I'm going to use a kitchen scale that can weigh in grams, and I'll just try to put equal amounts in here. So here I'm doing a lot of poking to try to get any air bubbles out and get it into all the crevices, especially any place that there's little overhangs like this nose. I'm going to poke it what seems to be more than necessary just to try to make sure it's in there. Here I'm using an air compressor to pop any bubbles in the silicone and to make sure that the silicone gets in all the little crevices. The first layer is tacky, so now I'm going to mix up more silicone for the second layer. First layer I did 150 grams of part A and B, so 300 grams overall. For this time I'm just going to do 100 grams of each, so 200 grams overall. So for this next layer I'm going to be thickening the silicone with Thivex. And I've heard that the best way to do this is with 4 drops per mixed ounce of silicone. So if I did this right, this should be a lot thicker and it won't run off as much. I'm still going to apply the silicone in a poking motion just to make sure there aren't any big bubbles in between the layers, but I'll be able to slap a lot more on here this time. One of the things I need to make sure I do is get all up under the teeth and smooth those out so there's not big undercuts that the mold jacket will get caught on later. I want to fill all this in under here. In general, I want to try to just smooth out all these features. So anywhere there's a hump or a sharp edge or anything, I want that to be smooth so the mold jacket won't get caught on it later. Then the mold would lock and I wouldn't be able to get it apart. There's still a couple sections like this where you can see the clay peeking through a little bit, so I want to make sure all those are covered and there's a good solid coat over this. My camera died during the last coat, but I just put on one more thickened coat over all this. I think we're going to do one more and then it should be good to go. Alright, I've got all the silicone on. Now it's time to do the rigid shell over top of it. I'm thinking the current plan for this is to try to do it in 3 parts, so I'm going to attempt to split it down the middle here and then maybe separate the horns across the center here so this part will come off and then these 2 parts will come off. I'm going to spray this with some mold release just to hopefully get the shell off easier later. I don't think there are going to be any downsides to spraying it with this, so we'll try it out. The instructions say to lightly mist the surfaces, then brush it down with a brush, then do another coat. So I'll do that. I've made some sort of mold walls out of aluminum foil and I've divided it into 3 different sections. So I've got one ridge down the center and then a ridge going across the top here to hopefully make it so the mold can come apart in 3 pieces. Some of the sections, like right here behind this little cheek horn thing, I was concerned maybe the mold would end up locking, like hooking behind here. So I put a little piece of foil to maybe help smooth that over and mitigate that a bit. I'm going to attempt to use freeform air for the mother mold that goes over the silicone. This is a 2-part epoxy dough, so you just mix the 2 doughs together till they're one color. So I'm just kneading this until it's going to be one consistent color. Alright, so this part of the freeform air is cured. I just waited the full 24 hours just to make sure it was good to go. Now I'm going to do one of the front sections. First, I think I'm going to try to flop this foil up over the top just to make sure that the next layer doesn't adhere to this at all. So I'll get this sorted out and then I'll start on the next section. I've noticed on the back of this horn I didn't quite get the freeform air all the way to my line. So I think if I don't fill this in, it's going to create kind of like a little hook where the mold could lock up. So I'm going to fill this in a little bit more with the freeform air on this side. The other side looks okay though, so I'll proceed with that side, making the whole shell over there. I've got a few exposed sections of freeform air on this side. They're kind of small, so it's hard to see on the camera, but I think right here. So I'm just going to take some aluminum tape and I'll just stick it over those spots. That way I know it's not going to bond to the other side and I'll have a bunch of issues trying to get it off later. First I'm going to fix this side and even this out a little bit. Now it doesn't have like a steep undercut that things might get caught on. Alright, now I'm going to attempt to do the second part of this 3-part mold. Alright, there's the second part. Now I'm going to let this one cure for 24 hours again. I did have a little bit left over because I mixed a little too much. So I just slapped it on the cheek here. It's a little ugly, but I didn't want it to go to waste. And I was just real careful not to connect it on this seam here. Alright, time for the third part. Like the other sections, I just flipped the aluminum foil up over what I already had. That way it doesn't stick. Over here where I added some more freeform air, I covered that with the aluminum tape just to make sure it wouldn't end up adhering to that. I didn't show this much for the previous sections, but after putting the freeform air on there, I've been dipping my hand in some water and then just smoothing it out just to make it look nice and so that there aren't any like jaggy bits that are going to poke me later when I try to eventually cast this in resin. The freeform air should be fully cured now, so now it's time to attempt to crack this thing open. I was feeling a little impatient last night, so I used a rasp to knock down all the edges and make those a little bit more flush. I'm going to mark different spots with a Sharpie, just in case this doesn't want to go back together super great. So I have some sort of registrations here. We'll see. I might not need these at all, and if I don't want them later, I can just wipe them off with some alcohol or sand them off or something. So the first step to getting this off of here is going to be removing the clay walls I had up. Now I'm going to try to wiggle a screwdriver in the seams to kind of crack the seal that's been made in there. Then we'll probably get some popsicle sticks and stick those in there to try to pry stuff apart as well. Now to demold the silicone. I think I'm going to try to pull the silicone down off the little teeth that it's going to be hooked on and then peel it up over the horns. This might be easier if I lay it down. Oh, alright, so gotta be careful pulling on the thin spots. It's kind of working. There it is. There's definitely a couple bubbly spots around the teeth in there, but hopefully it's not too bad. I think the rest looks pretty good though. I need to drill some holes in the mother mold so I can put a bolt through it so I can hold it together around the silicone for casting. So I put some tape here just to hold it in place. I'm going to drill a little pilot hole first. After I've drilled my pilot hole, I'm then going to use a bigger bit, in this case a 1/4 of an inch, and drill through that same hole. Then I have these 1/4 bolts and some washers and a wing nut. So I'm going to put a washer on either side and then just hand tighten the wing nut. And I'll just put those along the mold so it holds itself together. To mold the jaw, I just put it back on the head cast with some warm clay all mushed in there. and then refined the sculpt and got it to a place I liked. I put some like more details on it and kind of changed the shape a little bit. And then basically I just molded it like the top part of the mask. I did put these bits here because I thought maybe I would need to like drill a hole for like a pivot point for the jaw, but it ended up working out better just using elastic, so I didn't really need those, but they're easy enough to cut off, so it's not really a huge deal that they're there. And here's what the mold for that ended up looking like. Initially I did this mold in one piece, but when taking it off, it cracked down the middle here, so I just added on these walls with the freeform air and then drilled holes to put it back together, and it worked out fine. So there are my finished molds and the mask. I have videos of casting masks in resin on my channel already, but if you want to see a video of casting this one specifically, just let me know in the comments. So that's going to do it for this video. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed it, consider liking and subscribing, and I'll see you next time.